Hello, welcome back. In this video we're going to be starting the CSS for this website. I've already created a style.css file and linked it here in my HTML. So let's look at this file. The first thing that I'm going to do when I start a CSS file is create some resets. And CSS resets are a way to either undo or change the way that that the browser displays stuff by default. The browser always gives some default styling, right? It makes headings big and bold. It makes links blue and underlined. It gives default margin to a lot of stuff. So some people like to just like completely reset everything and just like undo every single style that the browser gives to anything. I don't like to go too crazy because it's good. It's good to let the browser kind of do its thing for the most part. But there's some things that generally I find it beneficial to just kind of undo. Mainly that's just zeroing out the margin and the padding. And I threw border in there just for good measure. Primarily it's the margin. There's not too many things that get a default padding. Lists are one of them. ULs and OLs get a default padding left to make room for the bullet points. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that gets default margin, and as you know from working on websites previously, sometimes I can kind of throw you for a loop. And so I just select all this stuff, all these different elements that I know that I'm using on the page, and just zero them out. The other thing we have down here is selecting an image and then the iframe, which will be used for the YouTube video. We're selecting those. We're giving them a max width of 100%, which will make them fluid so that they will grow and shrink with the browser window. And display block. Display block is a way to fix an issue where you end up having like a little bit of space between images. Images by default are display inline block, and that causes an issue where like the white space between images in your code actually shows up on the web page, and you'll get like a little bit of space in between each image. So just changing it to display block fixes that. The other thing I have on here is box sizing border box, which we've talked about before in class. This is kind of a fancy, like this is the best practice way of doing it, but you could just get by with just something like that. Box sizing border box. The asterisk is the universal selector. It selects every single thing in your on your site and gives it all box sizing and border box. So what I had before there is just kind of like what's considered a best practice, better way of doing that. But it's not going to matter on this particular website because we're not using any before or after pseudo elements. But anyway, yeah, just as a reminder, box sizing changes the box sizing to border box, makes it so that we don't have to worry about padding and border adding to the total width of our element. So if we tell an element to be 50%, it's going to be 50% no matter what, even if we add additional padding and border to that element. So that's all the stuff I like to start out with. The next thing we're going to do, just because I just don't like looking at this really ugly serif font here, is we are going to get the typeface that we need for the site. So on the desktop mockup, it tells us what the colors and the font are. So the font is Fiala 1, Fiala. I don't know. I was gonna like go into like some Gwen Stefani, but what am I doing? Google Fonts. So let's grab that from good old Google Fonts. Fiala 1. Actually, you know what? I'm not gonna waste time doing that. You guys know how to do Google Fonts, so I'll just grab that from the code that I already have here. Fiala 1 or Fiala 1. Paste that in there, and then select my body, font family. One sans serif. All right, let's make sure that works. Yes, it does. Great. Okay, and the other thing you need to pay attention to when you're using a font is the weight of the font. I didn't actually open it up in Google Fonts, but if you go to Google Fonts and you look at this font, you'll see that there's only one style of it. There's not like a regular and a bold and whatever, and because the browser always tries to make headings bold, even if there's not a bold version of the font, we get that faux bold effect. So I'm going to add to my resets here. I'm going to add here. I'm just going to select all the different kinds of headings here and say font weight normal. Okay. And I'm going to make a new section in my CSS here. It's always good to leave comments in your CSS to kind of break it out into different sections here. So this is where I'll do my typography and color stuff. All right, so yeah, so we have our CSS set up, and let's go ahead and let's start to think about layout. So we'll look at the mobile and look at our mockup here. So in our mockup for mobile, we have nav, we have the header, we have that text, the images, the other text, the logo, the footer, all stacked on top of each other. And lo and behold, that's exactly what we have here on our site. We don't have to do any CSS at all to make all of that stuff stack on top of each other. So that's easy. Obviously, it doesn't look like this yet. There's still a lot to go as far as colors and spacing and all of that stuff. But this is ready to go as far as that big picture layout. That's those sketches we made in the first video. We have that already for mobile. Obviously, the header is not correct yet. The elements aren't even in the right order here within our header, but we're not worried about that yet. We'll come back and kind of zoom in to the next level of detail there to get that header all arranged correctly. But for now, we're just worried about those big chunks and making sure those big chunks are more or less in the right order and in the right arrangement. And so for mobile, we don't even have to do anything with CSS. It just, because it just follows the order of our HTML, all of these are stacked as they should be. So I'll end this video here, and then in the next one we'll get into creating the layout for tablet and desktop.